Hi, everybody. Excuse me. Today we are going to do a little review of firm costs, and this is looking at the costs of production, the costs that firms undertake to produce goods in the short run and in the long run. And so this is just an example to help you get a sense of things like marginal cost, total cost, variable cost, fixed cost, average total cost, average variable cost, average fixed cost, all of those things, what we expect the relationship of those numbers to be, some of the terms that we're used to with those, and then what the graph is supposed to look like when you graph those curves together. So let's get started, okay? So the first thing I want to do is remind you of what kind of costs we're talking about when we're talking about firm behavior. So remember, when a firm produces goods and services, they're going to produce them at some kind of cost. In economics, we break down the costs a couple of different ways. The first thing we consider is the idea of implicit and explicit costs. Implicit costs are the things that economists worry about, things like opportunity cost. Explicit costs are the things you're already thinking of. The cost of materials, the costs of labor, the costs of your facilities, your land, your equipment, insurance, utilities, anything like that. Implicit costs, on the other hand, those are your opportunity costs. Those are things that you don't spend money on but have intrinsic value. So if you use your own car to deliver your goods, if you quit your job to start your own business, if you run your business out of your garage, all those things have value, but they don't cost you money. If you use your savings, there's an implicit cost because you could have been earning interest on that instead of using that money to buy materials, something like that. And so implicit costs are costs that you don't spend money on but still have value. When we think about accounting profit, accountants only consider explicit costs, but economic profit is going to be considered by economists to be your revenue minus your implicit and your explicit cost. So economists are always going to consider both. And so accounting profit is going to be higher than economic profit because there's going to be some other things taken into consideration in economic profit. The other way we can break costs down is into the time frame in which these goods exist or these inputs exist. So remember that the things that cost us money are the factors of production. And those are just what we call the inputs. Usually we think of them as being land, labor, and capital. But we can also think about things like entrepreneurship and technology, materials, those kinds of things. But the idea is that the factors of production are the things we use to produce that, and they come at some cost. Wages, rents, price, whatever. When we break down our costs, we can break them down in terms of our total cost, breaking them down into the goods that exist in the short run and the long run. Things in the short run are going to be things that go up and down as we increase and decrease production, and also things we can change any given day. So labor, we can fire someone or hire someone. Materials, we can order more, order less, use more, use less. They're going to fluctuate with quantity, and we can change them easily. So total cost is going to be variable costs. But that's not the only costs we have. We also have the cost of land and capital. Land and capital are things we don't think we can change in the short run, and it doesn't matter how many units I produce, how many buttons or shoes or burritos I make, I still am going to need a certain amount of base space and equipment. Those are the fixed costs that I can change eventually in the long run in months or years, but I can't change day to day. And so we can also consider our total cost being variable plus fixed costs. And we really break those down based on whether they fluctuate with production and whether we can change them in the short run or the long run. Okay? So let's go to an example, because the other thing we're going to look at to understand these things economically is we're going to help us understand how firms behave, we're going to break the costs down in terms of per unit measures. And so that means we're going to look at things like average and marginal costs. So, real quick definition. We already know what total cost is. Average total cost is going to be total cost divided by quantity. Average fixed cost is going to be fixed costs divided by quantity. Average variable cost is variable cost divided by quantity. And then the last one, which is really important, is marginal cost, which is the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. We're going to tend to always change a quantity by 1, so it's just going to be how much cost changes by. But the nice thing about this is the names make sense. Total cost averaged over quantity. Average fixed cost is fixed cost averaged over quantity. Variable cost is variable cost averaged over quantity. And then marginal cost is just the cost of each additional unit of production. So let's go to an example. What we want to think about here is how we expect these different costs to behave. And so we're going to look at them numerically, and then we're going to look at them graphically. So first up here, I have a chart with all of the different costs I'm going to produce. And I can produce 0 units, 1 unit, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Oh, can't see that. We're going to have to move that up a little bit. There we go. That's our different quantities we can produce. And we're going to look at costs at each stage of production. But the first thing we're going to see is not all of our costs change as we produce, right? We talked about having fixed costs. Fixed costs don't change as we produce. So if we're producing 0 units, our fixed cost is going to be $50. If we produce 1, it's $50. If we produce 2, it's $50. No matter how many units we produce, the fixed costs are always going to be the same. This is our rent, this is our insurance, something like that, that doesn't change as we increase and decrease production. So maybe we are making, we're producing water bottles. This is the cost of the machine that makes it, okay? Variable cost is going to change as we change our productivity. So it's going to be things like labor and materials. Whereas fixed costs are usually things like land and capital, which we usually symbolize with a K in economics. So what about our variable costs? Well, our variable cost when we aren't producing anything is going to be 0 because we aren't producing anything, so we don't need any materials or labor. We are shut down. We still have to pay our rent because we've signed a lease or we own the land. We have to pay our mortgage. But we don't have to hire anyone. We don't have to buy any materials because we're not producing. As we produce more, then we'll need to buy more materials. And the cost of the materials is going to fluctuate based on our productivity. And that's where we get this idea of diminishing marginal productivity. So let's look at that. The variable cost for our very first unit is going to be $10. And so that's going to give us a total cost. When we produced 0, our total cost was just our fixed cost, $50. But now our total cost is going to be fixed costs plus variable cost. That's going to give us a total cost of $60. If we produce 2 units, our variable cost is going to go up. Now it's $30, and if we produce 3 units, it's going to be $60. 4 units is going to be $100. 5 units is $150, and 6 units is $210. The total cost is fixed plus variable. So what's our total cost for 2 units? 50 plus 30, right? $80. What about producing 3 units? 50 plus 60, 110. So we can find our total cost just by adding fixed plus variable, right? There we go. 4 units is going to cost us 150. 5 units is 200. And what we can see here as we total up 6 units cost is that the costs are going to go up at an increasing rate because as we produce more and more units, we're putting more pressure on our capital, our existing material. So think about if we had a food truck, right? I use this example a lot. If you have a food truck, you can add more and more labor and materials to it, but it's going to get a little bit less efficient as the food truck gets more crowded until you add more capital. But since we're in the short run, we're not allowed to change our fixed costs, so our capital stays fixed. So the materials, the labor, the variable costs we add to it are going to get a little less productive as we increase our productivity. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions. I can give you other examples. So now let's calculate our averages. We have average fixed costs, which is just fixed costs divided by quantity. Average variable cost, which is just, variable cost divided by quantity. Average total cost, which is total cost divided by quantity. And then marginal cost, which is change in total cost divided by change in quantity. So let me make sure I pick a color that everyone can see very clearly. Let's go back to dark blue. So now average fixed cost is going to be fixed cost divided by quantity. There's no way to divide 50 by 0, so our averages when we have 0 are just nothing. But when we produce 1 unit, we have fixed costs of 50 divided by 1 is just going to be 50. What about our variable cost? Our variable cost is 10 divided by our quantity of 1, just going to be 10. And our average total cost, well, you can find it 2 different ways. You can take total cost divided by 1, or you can add average fixed and average variable to get 60. Either way. Now we want to find our marginal cost. And usually marginal cost is what gives people the most trouble. But if you think about it, marginal cost is just how much total cost changes as we go from 0 to 1. So how much does total cost change? It goes up by 10. So our marginal cost of our first unit is $10. Costs increase by $10 when we increase production from 0 to 1. So let's go and do a quantity of 2. If we produce 2 units, our fixed costs stay the same. So what's going to happen to average fixed costs? This is the trick. Average fixed costs, the way we expect it to behave is it's always going to be falling in the short run because fixed costs stay the same and quantity goes up. So we're going to be dividing 50 by 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5 and then 6. So this number is going to get smaller very quickly. So already we're going to go from 50 divided by 1 is 50 to 50 divided by 2 is 25. And we could keep going if we wanted to. 50 divided by 3 is going to be 16.67. 50 divided by 4 is going to be 25, or not 25, sorry, 12.5 or $12.50. 50 divided by 5 is going to be $10. And 50 divided by 6 is going to be $8.33. So that's our average fixed costs, always falling because the fixed cost stays the same and the denominator, the Q, gets bigger and bigger. Cool? What about our variable costs? Our variable costs go up and our quantity goes up, but the relationship is not staying the same. And so this is one of those curves that's going to be a little bit like a smiley shape, and we're going to see it go down and then go up. And that shows us the firm getting more efficient as costs fall and then less efficient as costs get higher and higher. And we encounter those diseconomies of scale, that less productive part of production. So let's see. We start out with producing 1 unit. The variable cost is $10. 10 divided by 1 is 10. If we want to produce 2 units, the variable cost is $30. 30 divided by 2 is going to be 15. What if we want to produce 3 units? Our variable cost is now $60 to produce 3 units. So what's our average variable cost? 60 divided by 3. Right? So far, so good? Okay. What about our average variable cost at a quantity of 4? Now we've got 100 divided by 4. That's going to give us an average variable cost of 25. And if we divide 150 by 5, we get average variable cost of 30. What if we divide 210 by 6? That's going to give us our average variable cost of 35. Cool? So it doesn't really go down and then go up. So what this is telling us is that for this firm, as they increase production, average variable costs are always rising. So they're not experiencing economies of scale when the costs go down as they produce more. What about average total cost? Average total cost is just total cost divided by quantity, or average variable cost plus average fixed cost. So what if we add them together? We get 25 plus 15 is 40, or we can do 80 divided by 2, also 40. And it's going to be the same any way you do it. Now we've got 20 plus 16.67, or 110 divided by 3. Either way, we're going to get 36.66 repeating, but we'll round it to 67. 150 divided by 4 is equal to 25 plus 1250, or 3750. Average total cost, 200 divided by 5, or 3 plus 10. It's going to give us 40. Oops, 30 plus 10 is definitely not 20. And then 260 divided by 6, or 8.33 plus 35 is going to give us 43.33. So that's average total cost. Hopefully that makes sense, right? Straightforward. It's just taking whatever we're saying and dividing it by quantity. Marginal cost is a little bit different, but like I said, as long as quantity is changing by 1, it's actually really straightforward because all we're looking at is the change in total cost. So as we move from a quantity of 1 to 2, our change in Q is 1, and as we move from 60 to 80, our change in TC, or total cost, is 20. So 20 divided by 1 is going to give us a change in total cost, or marginal cost, of 20. 80 minus 60 is 20. What if we go from 80 to 110? Well, 110 minus 80 is 30. 30 divided by the change in quantity, 1, is going to give us 30. Does that make sense? So technically, marginal cost is change in total cost divided by change in quantity. But practically, when we're just going from a quantity of 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, when the change in quantity is 1, we can just look at how much total cost changes at each level. So for example, going from 3 to 4, total cost goes from 110 to 150. That's a marginal cost of $40. Going from 4 to 5, total cost goes from 150 to 200. That's a marginal cost of 50. And then the last one is a marginal cost of 60, going from 200 to 60. Make sense? So hopefully this gives you, the whole point of this is to give you a sense of what these numbers mean and how they kind of behave. Now I'm going to graph them. And I'm going to show you exactly what these numbers look like first. And then I'm going to show you what we're going to see, which is kind of like the stylized version, what we're going to tend to expect these numbers to behave like. So we're going to need to be in the same space we always are in, where we have quantity on the x-axis and price, or cost in this case, on the y-axis. I'm going to go ahead and move us back up a little bit. There we go. And so this is the costs of production of whatever good we're talking about. And then we're going to want to scale. So I went from a quantity of 0 to 6. I'm going to put that down here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I want to look at what my costs were. I'm not going to use total costs. We're not going to use the total cost numbers to graph. We're going to graph average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost. Those are the ones we care about the most. Average fixed cost can be interesting, but really what we care about is average total cost, average variable cost, and marginal cost. And I'm going to try and use colors that sort of make sense to me, and I hope that helps it make sense to you. So we'll start with average variable cost. Well, first we'll start with our scale. Our average total cost goes from 60 to 36. Marginal cost goes from 10 to 60. Average fixed cost or average variable cost goes from 10 to 35. So we know we want to get up to about $60. So, and then I'll cut that in half here for 30. That's going to be 15. That's going to be 45. And so we might have that be 10. Then that might be 20, and that might be 40, and that might be 50, something like that. So let's start with average variable cost. Average variable cost is the change in variable cost as we change quantity. So it's going to start with an average variable cost of $10 for our first unit. So it's going to be about here. And then our second average variable cost point is 2 for 15. And then 3 is 20, which is about yay. 4 is 25. Oops. 5 is 30. And 6 is 35. Just about like that. So that's going to be our average variable cost curve. The next one we want to look at is our average total cost curve. And generally, average total cost and average variable cost are going to have the same shape, the same relationship as Q goes up. Because the only difference between average variable cost and average total cost is that average total cost is scaled up by the size of fixed cost. So remember, our fixed costs were 50. If we remember that our fixed cost was $50, and at 1 unit our average total cost is $10, what do you think average total cost is going to be? It's going to be that 10 plus 50 up here. And we're right. Average total cost is going to start at $60. And then it's going to fall. Our next average total cost value for 2, quantity of 2, is 40. That'll be about here. For 3, it's 36.67, so it's going to be about here. For 4, it's 37.58, or sorry, 37.50. For 5, it's back up to 40. And then for 6, it's actually pretty close to average variable cost because remember, our average fixed cost at a quantity of 6 is less than 10. So the difference between average variable and average fixed is going to fall to less than 10. Average variable cost is at 35 here, and average total cost is at 43.3. So that's going to be about, let's say, a little bit higher than the 37. So this is our average total cost curve. Cool? So far, so good. Now we want to put in our marginal cost curve. And our marginal cost curve is how much it costs to produce each additional unit. And this is going to be really important for firms as we start to talk about profit maximization. So let's make sure we're comfortable with marginal costs. So if you have any questions about marginal costs, please let me know. First quantity we're going to have a marginal cost curve for is 1. At a quantity of 1, marginal cost is at 10. Some books and textbooks and professors really make a big deal about having marginal cost be between 0 and 1. It's up to you. I'm not going to worry about it, but some people do. If you care, that is your choice. If you don't care, you can be with me over here in Not Caring Town. But some books will emphasize it, and some faculty will really emphasize it too, some professors. But I don't, because I don't think it's that important. I think the important thing is to get the sense of the shapes and what the implications are and the theories are. So, that being said, the marginal cost of the first unit is $10. The marginal cost of the second unit is $20. About here. The marginal cost of the third unit is $30. The marginal cost of the fourth unit is $40. The marginal cost of the fifth unit is $50. This is pretty easy, right? And the marginal cost of the sixth unit is $60. So our marginal cost curve looks like, oops, let's try it again. Oh, I'm getting it worse every time. That. So what we can see here is a couple of things. Marginal cost will always cross average variable cost and average total cost at their minimums. The other thing we see is average total cost and average variable cost coming together as fixed costs fall on average. And those are big, big intuitions for this chapter. Okay? The last thing I want to show you is the sort of stylized version. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and replace or erase my numbers here. But what I'm saying when I say stylized version is I'm just saying sort of the shape we expect these curves to be in general. In the example we just did, I had said that average variable costs and average total costs tend to be sort of smiley face shaped. That didn't happen because we didn't have that economies of scale point. But usually when we look at an example of a firm, especially a perfectly competitive firm, we're going to expect to see average variable costs kind of look like that. As we increase quantity, they'll go down and then up. Average fixed cost or average total cost is going to look a lot like what we saw earlier. It's going to be far away and then get closer to average variable costs. And then marginal cost, I always call the fish hook. They're going to tend to look kind of like that, but they're always going to be rising and they're going to cross average total and average variable at their minimums. And so this is sort of the stylized what we expect these curves to look like. You'll see this in your textbooks. You'll see this in examples, study guides, and on exams. So that's it. Now we have done an example of how to calculate costs that helps us review what average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost all mean, and what some of the intuitions are. Let me know what questions you have, and I'll see you next time.